Alright, hello. This should be running. Is it not? Okay, yes it is. Alright, so if you have any questions about either of these two potential typhoons over the next few days and you're watching this video after it goes live, you can always ask the questions in the comments and I will try to answer them in the next stream. Just going to share this stream on social media and then we will get started. We're going to be covering two systems. This isn't really landfall coverage. This is going to be about two different systems, both Ragasa and Bualoi. And yes, this should be working. Hi, Dark Steve. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So, we're going to be we're going to be covering briefly the forecast on Bualoi, since this is the one that could be impacting a lot more areas than just Ragasa. So, it is currently located roughly right over here. So this would be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's another forecast point like right over here or right over here. So it's just off screen where the storm is, and it's mainly just so that way you can see where the impacts are. There aren't any impacts in this region mainly. So the forecast track has it as a tropical storm over the next 12 hours before becoming a typhoon within the next 24 hours, before potentially weakening below typhoon status right before its landfall somewhere in the central Philippines. It will progress across the Philippines and enter the South China Sea still as a moderate tropical storm before re-intensifying into the South China Sea into a possible typhoon. Now, it may be a minimal typhoon, or it may be a stronger typhoon, or maybe even major typhoon, but it's still, narrowing down the details 4 days out is a little bit difficult because it also has to pass through the Philippines. Then it should move through Laos as a tropical storm. Um, Now, this is just the forecast, and then looking at the possible impacts, majority of the central Philippines here are going to be including northern or southern Luzon in those marginal impacts. And then parts of Vietnam, Laos, those areas, Thailand, Vietnam, all those areas, and southern China even. Also, Guangxi and Guangdong province could get marginal impacts, mainly in the form of rain and wind. It's mainly uncertain as to where the system would go. If it goes more in this northern end, then it could bring some of those heavier rainfall rates over there. So this is kind of encompassing where you could get impacts. Pretty much. If it goes on the southernmost end, if it goes on the northernmost end, that kind of thing. Now, looking at slight impacts, these are mainly going to be in the form of damaging winds in terms of power outages, some minor flooding, some slight flooding, and also trees down, that kind of stuff. So again, this corridor through the central Philippines, including Manila, in that, and then in Vietnam, eastern Laos, and just a majority of Vietnam and southwestern Hainan Island there in that slight category. Now, there are going to be some areas that could experience moderate impacts. This is mainly due to the fact that they could be hit with a typhoon strength system here. So the eastern Philippines, so southeastern Luzon, and northern, I don't know if that's Visayas or what region that is specifically, but those areas could experience typhoon force winds. And then also looking at the coast of Vietnam, a large portion of Vietnam could experience moderate impacts, and that's mainly because it's pretty uncertain as to where specifically the system will go. And there is also the possibility in southwestern Hainan Island could see a typhoon force winds there. Now, going over the brief broad overview of tropics right now, we do still have a lot going on. We have major Hurricane Gabrielle in the Atlantic, which is moving off towards the northeast. Hurricane watches are in effect for the Azores Islands for that system. We are currently code yellow, I believe, for that system. In the North Atlantic, though, we also have two disturbances here. 93L should be moving mostly out to sea or towards Bermuda. Has a 40% chance of development over the next 48 hours and an 80% chance over the next 7 days. 94L here is the more likely land threat, which could impact Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, the Bahamas, southeastern United States, including Florida, and the Carolinas, Georgia, those regions. It has a 10% chance of development over the next 48 hours and a 50% chance of development over the next 7 days. So we are both code yellow for Gabrielle and 94L. Looking in the eastern Pacific, we now have Hurricane Narda, which is likely beyond just the high-end Cat 1. It's probably a Cat 2 at this point. Could become a major hurricane as it meanders out to sea before eventually dissipating out in the eastern Pacific. Looking in the western Pacific, we have Typhoon Neoguri, which is likely weakened underneath typhoon status. The system, though, could re-intensify to a typhoon before moving to the northeast. Could become a major Cat 3, Cat 4 typhoon again, but fortunately it won't really be impacting land. Also, in the western Pacific, we have, of course, Typhoon Ragasa, which is likely either a minimal Cat 4 or high-end Cat 3, which that is going to be making landfall just south of Hong Kong in western Guangdong province before moving in towards Guangxi province and then eventually dissipating over either Vietnam or Laos. We also have Tropical Storm Bualoi here with winds of 45 miles an hour. This is the system that's going to be threatening the central Philippines and then eventually moving on towards Vietnam. We also have the remnants of 98B in the North Indian Ocean over India, which could develop as it meanders towards western India, giving it a 10% chance over the next 48 hours and a 30% chance over the 7 days. Now let's take a look at the satellite imagery on Typhoon Ragasa here. We can still see a well-defined eye. Something else you'll notice here is this moat here on the outer edges of the eye there, outside of the eye wall, mainly in the nighttime imagery there, you can see that. That is due to its eye wall replacement cycle. It's trying to get rid of its current eye wall and get a new, larger one developing, and I can show that on here. Here's what it looks like. It's not going to be able to complete it, but the problem though is those impacts of typhoon force winds will be extending well outside of the center. And here's a look at infrared imagery. We can see that the system is continuing to weaken, and its eye is continuing to close. So it may make landfall only as a Cat 2, Cat 3. Let's hope it weakens more. And here's a look at the higher resolution visible imagery. Alright, now looking at why it's weakening, waters look pretty warm here, 29 degrees Celsius. The main problem is oceanic heat content. This is tropical cyclone heat potential here. It's dropped off a lot, and also that tropical cyclone heat potential has lowered a bunch with the upwelling. Anyways, yes, as it continues moving westwards there, it's entering an area of less oceanic heat content, so not as much fuel for the storm. Alright, now looking at distance from certain areas here, we're going to start off with Ragasa. It is currently the center, at least. Remember, this is the center, so it doesn't necessarily mean the impacts. Alright, so it is currently roughly around 140 kilometers away from Hong Kong, roughly around 90 kilometers away from Macau, roughly around 210 kilometers away from where it will likely make landfall, and roughly around 400 to 500 kilometers away from Guangxi province where it will make landfall, and roughly around 600 kilometers away from Vietnam. Beyond that, it is roughly around 1,100 kilometers away from Laos and around 1,300 kilometers away from Myanmar. Looking at the next system after that, Bualoi, also known as Opong, its center is roughly around 850 kilometers away from the Philippines and roughly around 1,400 kilometers away from Manila. The system will be moving fairly quickly, and it's roughly around 2,700 kilometers away from Hainan Island and around 2,700 kilometers away from Vietnam. And beyond that, it's not really worth it to say how far. It's around 3,000 kilometers and beyond from those areas. Alright, let's see now. Looking at the model runs here, this is the latest European run. We can see Typhoon Ragasa there moving inland there, but emerging in the Gulf of Tonkin just barely there as a typhoon before moving inland and dissipating over Vietnam. We can also see Bualoi there intensifying before it peaks and then begins to weaken before it makes landfall near Manila in eastern Luzon before it emerges in the South China Sea and makes landfall in Vietnam as a broad and sloppy tropical storm. Looking at the latest American run here, we can see Typhoon Ragasa there weakening before making landfall in Guangdong province. Does not really make it in the Gulf of Tonkin and dissipates over Vietnam. We can see Bualoi here strengthening, peaks as a possible typhoon before it gradually weakens before making landfall in central Philippines, moves across Manila, and then reemerges into the South China Sea and quickly intensifies to a typhoon, potentially even major typhoon, before making landfall in northern Vietnam. Then the system moves inland and quickly dissipates over southeastern Asia, mainly Thailand. Looking at the latest Canadian run here, we can see Ragasa weakening. Doesn't really make it in the Gulf of Tonkin as much and dissipates over Vietnam. This next system, though, does again peak. This one, the Canadian run, has it peaking at landfall in the northern portions of the Philippines, moving across Manila as a possible weak typhoon or severe tropical storm before emerging into the South China Sea as a severe tropical storm and intensifying to a typhoon before making landfall in Hainan Island and eventually northern Vietnam, before dissipating over northern Vietnam. The latest German run here does have Ragasa making landfall in Guangdong province and dissipating over Vietnam. The next system, it has it as a sloppy tropical mess moving across Manila into the South China Sea. Stays a pretty broad tropical storm, nothing too bad with that. Looking at the latest European ensembles, it's fairly consistent as to where the system will go here. Here's a look at that track, and on Bualoi here, on where it should go. This is a little bit on the northern end of this forecast I've made. It keeps it towards the north and goes over Manila, looks like, and maybe even a little bit more north of Manila. And when it emerges into the South China Sea, it looks like it could make landfall in Hainan Island, at least on this run. Looking at the American ensembles, it's a similar story, so maybe this forecast will be shifted more to the north. But yeah, you can see the ensembles on here, moving across the northern Philippines before eventually reaching the South China Sea. Looking at the European AI model, this is something I'm interested to look at. Where does it make landfall? It makes landfall in eastern Luzon before moving across Manila, but emerges into the South China Sea in between Hainan Island and Vietnam, nears the Gulf of Tonkin before making landfall in the northern portions of Vietnam. Also, there's another signal on this, on these, at least on the European run here. You can see the signal start to appear there, which could impact the Philippines over the next 10 days. Again, though, it's a little bit too far out, so nothing's been marked. Now, looking at the HAFS-A model run here, interestingly enough, it does have it making landfall in the, I forget what peninsula that is, but in Guangdong province, southwestern Guangdong province, as a possible major typhoon. So it doesn't have it, it has it staying more to the west, which means it reemerges in the Gulf of Tonkin as a possible typhoon before making landfall in by the Vietnam-Guangxi border. Just something interesting I noticed there. I do want to pull up the latest forecast on Bualoi here and what it wants out of it. Okay, it wants it as a possible typhoon moving across the Philippines, peaks over the Philippines, moves across Manila or just the southwest, becomes a typhoon as well, but a very low pressure for how strong it is there. 950s in terms of millibars. That is fairly low pressure. Let me see if it has a core intact. Not really. Okay. And looking at, let's see, the latest Pagasa forecast on this system, we can see it is a tropical storm. It is expected to become a severe tropical storm by 2 a.m. Friday, nears the Philippines on Friday, and then it starts approaching Manila overnight on Friday into Saturday morning before exiting the Philippine Air Responsibility on Sunday early morning, around either Saturday night or Sunday morning. It then will near Hainan Island at around Monday morning, or even before that, either Sunday night, Monday morning, generally around that time frame. So it looks like Sunday, Monday, or going to the Philippines here, could see impacts mainly on Friday is going to be the main day of impacts, looks like, across the central Philippines. Friday morning up to Saturday morning or Saturday night. So Friday morning through Saturday night is going to be the main time of impacts. And then for parts of Hainan Island, looks like Sunday nights into Monday are going to be the days of impacts there. Vietnam could be Monday into Tuesday. A little bit hard to nail down the details here. This forecast is a little bit slower than the other models, I believe, which I would like to pull up on here. Okay, let me stop that. Okay, so this one would be Thursday morning for you all. And then this would be Thursday nights for you all. So it's weird how Pegasa is forecasting a generally slower system out of it. This would be Friday morning, Friday nights, Saturday morning. So it looks like by Saturday morning it should be gone. I don't know why Pegasa is forecasting a generally slower system out of it. Let me see what the Google AI model thinks. Because it should be a similar story. Yep, this is Thursday nights. It looks like Thursday nights into Friday morning, and Friday nights are going to be the main time of impacts. We should see Signal 1 warnings get issued pretty soon, and signal warnings of up to 3 are going to be expected out of this. Looking at the latest Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast, or let's actually update this a bit. Oh, is it not on here? Okay, there it is. So the forecast has shifted just barely to the south there. Still has it as a major typhoon, makes landfall as either a high-end Cat 2 or low-end Category 3, before merging in the Gulf of Tonkin as a Category 1, making landfall somewhere along the border of Vietnam and China, before it makes it into the parts of northern Vietnam, northern Laos, and parts of Thailand before dissipating there. I would like to look at the Google AI model here on this system. It does have it strengthening up until a landfall there, reaching or becomes a typhoon, and then gradually weakens by the time it nears Samar Island. Moves across the central Philippines near Manila, just to the south, before potentially becoming a typhoon again. Now, some of these models do show, like one ensemble, for example, shows a Cat 4 making landfall in the Philippines, and then not really seeing any Cat 4 ensembles here, but we are seeing some Cat 2, Cat 3 ensemble members starting to appear in the South China Sea. Depends on how long it has before it makes that landfall. See, there's mainly two different scenarios here, or three different scenarios, I guess. If it goes to the south end of guidance here, it doesn't have a whole lot of time to intensify before making landfall in the in Vietnam. In the northern end here, if it follows the center forecast here, it does give it more time to intensify here. Roughly this amount of time there. So that's why we could see a typhoon of that. Now, if it stays on the northern end of guidance, this is when it gets the most amount of time to intensify, and we could see a major typhoon out of this. It's still uncertain. It's still like 4 to 5 days out, so we're not exactly sure how strong it will be. We'll have a better idea once it emerges into the South China Sea. How much does the Philippines weaken it, pretty much? Alright, now looking at the radar imagery here, we can see that double eye wall that we were looking at earlier on this. We can see the current eye right in here, and we can see that secondary eye starting to appear on the northeastern side. Looking over the past 24 hours of the radar loop here, we can clearly see that double eye wall feature of the storm as it approaches China and moves south of Hong Kong there. You can see that outer eye wall battering Hong Kong. Thankfully, it's now moving away from Hong Kong there. Now they're just getting they're getting a little bit of a break, but they could be hit by this outer band. This outer band impacting Guangzhou and, what is Macau. Maybe we could see, I don't know if we'll see a landfall on that island over there. Maybe if it tracks more to the north. But they could get into the eye wall, so we could see possibly major impacts for those islands over there. And then by the time it reaches Guangdong there, we'll see how much that eye wall is able to get torn apart. That eye wall has continued to weaken, that inner eye wall, if I compare it for around 24 hours ago. We can see the structure starting to degrade on that inner eye wall, and that's where the strongest winds are located. So let's take a look at the rainfall forecast over the next 5 days. I doubt we have radar imagery on Bualoi. Nope. Okay, so let's look at the rainfall forecast over the next 5 days on the various model runs. Now, this is a combination of two storms, so keep that in mind. In parts of like China and Vietnam, it combines two storms here. But parts of Hong Kong could see an additional around 100 millimeters to 200 millimeters of rain. Parts of Guangdong province could see up to 300 millimeters of additional rainfall. Parts of Guangxi province could see up to 200 millimeters of rain. And parts of northern Vietnam could see up to 250 to 260 millimeters of rain. Hainan Island could see anywhere from around 60 millimeter, around 80 millimeters to up to 230 millimeters of rain. Parts of the central Philippines here could see around 100 to even 400 millimeters of rain. Parts of Manila on this run are up to around 100 millimeters of additional rainfall. Looking at the American run here over the next 5 days, parts of Hong Kong get in at around an additional 75 millimeters of rain. Southern Guangdong gets in up to 150 millimeters. Parts of Hainan Island could see up to 250 millimeters. Guangxi province could see 200 millimeters of rain. And the coast of Vietnam could see up to 200 to 300 millimeters of rainfall, depending on where it makes landfall. Now, the Philippines here could see anywhere between 50 to 250 millimeters of rain. Manila only gets in at around 60 millimeters of rain on this run. Parts of the South China Sea could get over 400 millimeters of rainfall in isolated areas, but fortunately not over land. But if that's any more to the east, that could pose a problem for Mindoro. Looking at the latest German run here, Hong Kong gets in at an additional 150 millimeters of rain. Parts of southern Guangdong province gets in at up to 250 millimeters of rain. And Vietnam gets in up to around 70 millimeters of rain and up to 80 millimeters of rain in Guangxi province. Parts of Hainan Island could see anywhere between 10 to 190 millimeters of rain. And eastern Vietnam doesn't get a whole lot on this run because it keeps it as a weaker system. And for parts of Metro Manila, only around 30 millimeters. This is the low end scenario, if the system doesn't even really develop that much. Looking at the access model over the next 5 days here, we can see generally totals of around 100 to 200 millimeters for a large portion of the Philippines here, mainly the central Philippines. Vietnam gets in around the same totals, up to 200 millimeters in some spots. And yeah, that is the rainfall forecast. Now that's pretty much it there, so let's answer some questions. Samar is Eastern Visayas. Is it Visayas? Visayas? I'm going to pull up Google Translate. Let's see, Visayas.
Visayas.
Visayas. Okay. And let me just look up where that is specifically. Visayas. Okay, so that is Visayas. So it's Luzon, Visayas. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Visayas. So that's where it's headed. Oh no, ask, is it possible for Bualoi to rapidly intensify? It is possible. Some of those ensemble members are showing it becoming a strong storm, like the highest one has it becoming a Cat 4 before making landfall in Samar Island. But I'm not quite sure about that verifying, because if we look at the latest European AI run here, on the upper level pattern is not as favorable, I don't believe. No. If you notice Ragasa there, perfectly like in that center of the upper level anticyclone there. Whereas this system, it's not really in that. Here's the upper level anticyclone over here, or anticyclone. This one, it's just not really a whole lot of outflow for it. It's getting sheared. It's moving with it though, so kind of counteracts that shear. Starts facing land interaction. I believe that's what kind of weakens it as well. In the South China Sea, maybe it intensifies a lot more. It depends on where it's located compared to that upper level anticyclone, how much it's able to develop that especially in the South China Sea here. That's why the American run does blow it up a lot more. Alright, so I think it could rapidly intensify in the South China Sea. It's unlikely to, though, in the, where was I going to say, in the Philippine Sea. Could still become a typhoon, though. Opong is becoming a major or a typhoon in the Philippine Sea and major typhoon in the South China Sea, possibly. Um, What's sad to hear. Mackenzie mentions update on reports on Ragasa, Nando. 5 to 7 people are killed by Ragasa, Nando, all in the Philippines. Also, some reports tornadoes in Cagayan and Ilocos Sur. Heavy floods reported in northern Luzon and Taiwan. Are there any deaths in Babuan Island? Do you know, or the Babuan Islands? Let's see. Yes, Invest 93 and 94L could become a hurricane, or both of them could become hurricanes, and they could do a dance around one another. We call this the Fujiwara effect. Here, I'll pull up the latest European AI model here, and you can see both of those systems, and it is going to be a nightmare to forecast these two if they both develop. And really, that Western one that could impact the United States, it is such a nightmare to try and forecast that because it all depends on how strong this Eastern system gets, 93L. Yeah, so I'm not sure how this is going to work with their outflows and things like that, jet interaction, all that kind of stuff. Okay, and then the shear from both of those two systems are just going to be choking each other out, possibly. Let's see, is that a case of wave breaking, I think? Okay, just trying to see if that's wave breaking. Yeah, kind of. Okay, yes, that is. That's going to try and. Well, okay. Let me go back. Okay, there's the upper level low right now. Just looking at some certain features here. So what's going to try and kill the basin for a little bit is going to be this right here, this tut right in there. I believe we can also see that in the 200 millibar winds. Yep, right there. Due to some wave breaking, um, just becomes an upper level low there, shearing everything in the Caribbean. But fortunately, that's going to stop any other tropical development beyond these two systems. But yeah, both of these systems could try to become hurricanes. They're going to compete over that. We'll see how strong they get. Could become a threat to the Bahamas, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, the southeastern United States, the mid-Atlantic, those areas. Narda has been having that look all day. Wouldn't be surprised to wake up to a Cat 3 or Cat 4 tomorrow. Yep, if we look at the latest microwave imagery on Narda, let's see, when was it? Okay, here it is. There, you can see that eye wall developing. And yes, it definitely has that look. Could become a major hurricane over the um, next 12 to 24 hours or so. Shear, I think, is going to be increasing. Let's see, where is it? I mean, shear is right now, moderate, so it's not that great for it to intensify, and it's expected to get a little bit worse. Um, Everything else, though, should be fine. Right. Hong Kong is safe from the worst impacts from Typhoon Ragasa. Yeah, but unfortunately, the system is so large that they are experiencing strong winds from it. Let me see, where'd my model run go? Here it is. Okay. If we go to Ragasa here in the wind field of it, that's weird though how it has the next system becoming a major typhoon. I'm confused about that. Why does this is the 18Z run, and if I look at Bualoi on here on the 18Z run, that's suspicious. It's the same exact model run, just I'm gonna do the parent run Just trying to figure out why is there that inconsistency. Yeah, because if I select Ragasa on here, that system then becomes a major typhoon. But if I select that system itself, this is suspicious why there's two separate model solutions here for it. Even though they're the same run time and things like that. I guess it's just running its structure. I don't know, but if you notice though, if we go back to Ragasa here and then we look at Bualoi, here it does have it becoming a major typhoon, or just nearing that intensity. So Cat 2, Cat 3, um, as it makes landfall in Vietnam. So that's why there could be major impacts possible. But right now, I have it at moderate impacts, or possibility of moderate impacts, because we're not sure exactly where it's going to make landfall. I don't like to mention major impacts unless we know more of like, oh, within the next 3 days or so. Just this far out, it's uncertain as to where it's going. That cone of uncertainty is quite large. Hainan Island, northern Vietnam, all the way down to southern Vietnam. Let's see what else. Mackenzie mentions the fact that Gabrielle will be impacting Europe as an extratropical cyclone. Yes, if we look at that on the HAFS run, Gabrielle, and actually let's zoom out a bit because it's going to be a large system. It'd be better if we zoomed out. Yes, we can see the system as a major hurricane. It will weaken and potentially remain a hurricane impacting the Azores Islands. It's been a while since that's happened, and then moves off towards the Iberian Peninsula, or Spain and Portugal, as a gale force low, before eventually weakening and potentially dissipating by there. Rainfall, I don't know how much of a concern that's going to be for Spain just yet. Not a whole lot, maybe up to 50 millimeters of rain shown there. And let's see about the fronts here. When does it become frontal? I don't know, it doesn't show it really becoming frontal that much. Alright, anyways, next question. Good question, Force 13 Phonetic. Why was the North Indian Ocean... Oops. That's right, okay. That's right, okay. Alright, so why was the North Indian Ocean cyclone season so slow this year? Um, well, there hasn't really been a storm that's been able to, or like any disturbance or anything like that that's been able to pop out in that region. Um, I guess a lot of sheer, I don't know, it's all luck there. There hasn't really been a solid low that formed in the Bay of Bengal or even Arabian Sea. There hasn't really been a solid low pressure area there. Although we could see two other tropical cyclones try to develop over the next 7 to 10 days. So just it's not going to be completely quiet. We've had some land depressions and land storms. So all right, nobody's died in the Babuin Islands. That's good. At least that's our latest report on it. Um, Aaron asked, how likely is Bualoi to change trajectory? So in this cone of uncertainty, roughly 2/3 of the time it will stay in that cone, meaning a third of the time it's going to exit that cone. So that's pretty much the likelihood of it to change its trajectory. Maybe it goes more to the north, maybe it goes more to the south. It's just 2/3 of the time it will stay in this cone, so in this area, the center at least. That's pretty much the point of what the cone means. It's just like Dante and Emong were earlier this year. Those two invests are going to be fighting each other. Any update on the Eastern Pacific and South Indian Ocean? The Eastern Pacific, I believe it's going to remain a bit quiet after Narda, but there could be some disturbances that form. No, not really. Yeah, beyond that's something also in the near Central America there. Let's see if that stayed consistent at all. Not really. If I go to the past, or like the next 10 days, the Eastern Pacific should stay quiet. Not really seeing anything. There was a brief signal, but that's kind of disappeared. Actually, let me look at something else there. What was that? Okay, so I thought I saw something. And you asked about the South Indian Ocean. Let's see if there's anything there that pops up. Not really, no. Still remaining quiet. Okay, by the way, Pagasa updated Opong for 11 a.m. Did they issue signal warnings, anything like that? Let's take a look. Okay, is this their latest update? No, that's 5 a.m. Thank you. I'll check it on Facebook. Hold on, I'm just gonna see what happened here. Um, at Force 13 Fanatic, you weren't banned or anything, I don't think. Okay, yes, sorry, I'm streaming, so I can't really search up things. Um, can Bualoi rapidly intensify like Typhoon? I don't know how to pronounce that name, sorry, but I'll search it up. Um, I doubt it. I don't think it's gonna get this strong. It could. Um, I'm not. I don't think it's gonna get that strong though. This would be the high end scenario. I feel like it's just gonna be a Cat 1. Let's see what other questions. Will the two other systems also go towards Europe? It's too far out to say for sure. Those ones in the Atlantic, way too far out to say for sure. Not within the next 7 days. Okay, I'm briefly going to check on the update from Pagasa, see if they posted it on Facebook, for example. What the heck is the JMA forecast showing? Okay. Um. Ooh, that is something that I want to show you all. Is going to be the rainfall forecast. Right, let me see if I can find it. Just gotta scroll down a bunch. Where is it? Okay, here it is. So here is going to be the rainfall forecast for today in the Philippines. So Zambales, Bataan, and western Mindoro could see around 50 to 100 millimeters of rain today. Not a whole lot. Um, not too much of a problem. The next day as well, not too much of a problem. I'll pull that up. It's going to be again western Mindoro and northern Samar and eastern Samar there. That could see around 50 to 100 millimeters of rain. It is going to be the following day. That's going to be the problem. And I'll show that to you all on here. So we could see areas in northern Samar and Sorsogon with rainfall of over 200 millimeters of rain. We have parts of southeastern Luzon there in over 100 to 200 millimeters of rain, and the rest of Samar and the Visayas region, and 50 to 100 millimeters, including Metro Manila, and a majority of the central Philippines, including Palawan and then the Visayas Islands, those areas. So some of those areas could see up to 250 millimeters or greater, especially in northern Samar. So those areas could experience a widespread incidence of severe flooding and landslides are expected. Did the hurricane season wake up? Yes, it did. Um, I comment everywhere. I don't remember you, sorry. I don't know what your name was before. Ragasa versus main cut. I don't know. Okay, it's now 11 o'clock. Yes. Metro Manila can feel typhoon force winds. It's possible. Again, it all depends on where the system's going. I haven't marked that as a possibility, really, or what's likely. It's mainly going to be this area that could experience typhoon force winds. Maybe further to the west. It all depends on how strong it gets, how slow it weakens, or if it weakens at all before making landfall. Um, I don't really think about typhoon force winds happening in Manila. Maybe damaging winds like power outages, trees down, that kind of stuff could happen, but I'm not so sure about typhoon force winds. Is Cavite safe? I don't know where that is, so I am going to search that up. Okay, Cavites is there, and let me zoom out off stream, just trying to figure out where exactly this is. Okay, Cavite is just south of Manila. They could get slight to moderate impacts, mainly slight impacts. So things like power outages and trees down, that kind of stuff is possible. Maybe some flooding, some slight flooding. And on the rainfall forecast there, looks to be around 50 to 100 millimeters of rain on Friday. Um, Why is there no significant hurricanes in the Atlantic in early September? It has to do with something called the MJO, just not really in a favorable position in the Atlantic, or across the world for the Atlantic. So really not a whole lot happening, and there's a lot of dry air, a lot of what we call wave breaking and things that just spawn a bunch of shear spawning machines. To put it simply. Can you check on Hurricane Narda? Sure. Remember, you all were starting the hashtag Justice for Narda, so sure, let's take a look at that system. Whoa, okay, yeah, it's looking a lot better now. Look at that eye feature begin to pop out there. The eye temperature is warming, meaning that it's starting to pop up. We could be waking up to a major hurricane tomorrow. I think that's pretty likely. I'm curious what the hurricane models have out of it. Let's see. They aren't initializing great. They have it as a high-end cat, only 5 knots stronger, so I don't think that's likely. But, these models are not doing a great job at it. Maybe it's just that one, or all of them not doing great. All of them aren't doing great, I think, if I look at the HWRF. Not really doing great with that either. Takes a while for it to intensify. Is it weakening, in fact? Maybe this run will do better. Or this model. Nope, they all seem to struggle. This one, though, does have it as a major hurricane later down the road, before quickly weakening. Sorsogon. Okay, let's look at where that is. I believe that's the area that's, yep, getting over 200 millimeters of rain possible for Sorsogon. And again, looking at the forecast, my forecast cone here, those areas could experience moderate impacts. Moderate impacts are possible. Currently forecasting slight impacts, but we could see some typhoon force winds there. Is Ragasa updated? I'm going to check. Nope, I haven't seen it on their Facebook page. I'll check their website. I doubt that's updated as well. Nope, nothing's been updated just yet. I don't think it's going to be a severe tropical storm just yet. It should take a while to intensify, or not a while, but maybe at least another 12 hours or so. Does it weaken while traversing west towards southern Luzon? But Manila area after making landfall in Samar and/or Region 5. Now, I can't really tell you a bunch about geography there, but what I can tell you, though, is it does look like it will be weakening after it impacts, or even before it makes landfall. It looks like it will weaken possibly below typhoon status. Maybe it just stays a minimal typhoon as it makes landfall in the Visayas region. But it will be weakening as it moves across land. It's just not in a favorable environment anymore, so that's why it's kind of weakening before making landfall. Um, and the and it's also land interaction, so that also helps to weaken it. So it should be a weaker storm by the time it reaches around Manila and northern Luzon, or southern Luzon, sorry, southwestern Luzon. Yeah, so it should emerge also into the South China Sea as a weaker storm. Will Narda rapidly intensify? It already is rapidly intensifying, in my opinion. Is Narda going to be a Cat 3? I'd say that's likely. Michiboy mentions that oceanic heat content is really high east of Samar, like over in this region. Yes, but the problem though is sometimes the waters can be very favorable, but the upper level, like the environment and shear and that kind of stuff, just isn't quite favorable for it. It can't vertically stack itself. So if we look at the halves run, for example, if I pull up one of these for it and we take a look at it when it's nearing the Philippines here, shear is decently high from the east, easterly shear. It is moving to the west though, so that kind of counteracts the shear if it's moving as at the same direction that the shear's moving towards. Um, but yeah, it is going to be encountering some hostile shear, or at least moderate shear by the time it's crossing the Philippines here. Let's see, will this allow me to see this? Yes, it will. So yeah, moderate shear as it's crossing the Philippines. When it merges into the South China Sea, though, that should really allow for it to intensify a lot more. Yeah, look at that. Shear is incredibly low in the South China Sea near the Gulf of Tonkin, so I'm surprised this doesn't blow it up any more than it does on here. This could rapidly or explosively intensify. Wow, okay. I'm going to look at this again at the shear forecast. Yeah, very low in the South China Sea and Gulf of Tonkin, so yeah, this thing could blow up dramatically there. Depends on how far to the north it gets. Like I mentioned on here, if it stays to the southern end, it doesn't have a whole lot of time to intensify. If it stays on the central path, it gives it time to intensify to like a typhoon. If it goes on the northernmost end, though, it could intensify all the way up to a major typhoon. So just something to keep in mind. Well, I'm at 2.79 thousand subs. Thank you guys so much. Did not realize. Will Narda rapidly, or yeah, okay, I answered that. Is Narda going to be Cat 3? Is Laos in the path of two storms? Um, yeah, I mean, both of those storms are going to be threatening Laos, or Laos, sorry, Laos. Bualoi is blowing up to minus 80 Celsius cloud tops. Let's look at what that's doing right now. Yes, and we can notice this nice banding feature here It did have a nice banding feature. Now it's kind of consolidating a lot more right in there, so it's doing nice. Can't complain too badly about it. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a super typhoon. Our economy is bad enough. I don't think it's going to be a super typhoon at all. Manila can possibly get signal 4. I doubt it. Um, I highly doubt that from the system. Maybe signal 2 warnings. Yeah, if you're all mentioning like, oh, is it possible for signal 3 to 4 warnings? I'd say signal 2 warnings. Maybe signal 3 warning at the most. What are you guys talking about with the flood control projects and things like that? I don't know what that is. Can you explain that? What you mean by the flood control or flooded control projects, or I don't know what that all is. Flood prevent. I don't know. Any update on Pagasa? I'll check. Nope, not yet. On their Facebook page, maybe they'll update on their website. Nope, still not an update. I'm gonna save that though on here, so that way we can see a before and after forecast of it. Again, if you have any questions, be sure to ask them in the chat and I will gladly answer. If you want to know about your local impacts that you could get over the next 5 days, I would gladly answer. Where's its center though? Okay, if we talk about Bualoi here, roughly right there, I'd say. I'm curious if we have a scatterometer pass. I'm going to look at that. I just want to know how strong the storm is. Ooh, okay. We did get a pass. I'm going to figure out how strong this is on here. Just going to briefly check. In my Discord server, you can also, oh yeah, also if you'd like, you can join my Discord server. There should be a link um, on my channel somewhere if you look at one of my animations. Where there's tools that you can use to estimate the strength of tropical cyclones. So this is roughly around 45 knots right now. So it's around 50 miles an hour. So it is strengthening. Um, I'd say it's on pace there to become a typhoon still. Could make landfall as a typhoon in the Philippines, at least forecasted on here. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center does forecast it to weaken. Um, hello HEC, hi Zen. Um, Nard is now a Category 2 on my storm map, yep. Live in Manila, so yeah. I don't think Manila's getting Signal 3 or anything like that. Or Signal 4. How much rain in Cebu? Is it Cebu? Hold on. I'm gonna figure that out. Because that's a big city, so I wanna know how to pronounce that. Cebu?
Cebu,
Cebu. Okay. Cebu. So Cebu, if I zoom in, is right over here. Cebu City. The access model over the next 5 days only shows 20 millimeters of rain. The European run shows around 20 millimeters of rain. The American run shows up to 50 millimeters of rain, and the German run shows 30. So I'd say around 10 to 100 millimeters of rain are going to be possible in those areas. And on here, Cebu is going to be, let's see, the funky shaped island, which that doesn't narrow it down, but not really showing a whole lot of rain there. But at least on the forecast here for Cebu, could see marginal impacts. So maybe some tropical storm force winds like gale force winds. Let's see, how about in Kevites? We have two questions about Kevites. Kevites, let me just double check. I'm going to search up how to pronounce that. Hold on.
Cavite.
Cavite. What? Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Cavite. Cavite. Yeah, Kevites is not right. Okay, so Cavite. So those impacts that you could get in Cavite, looks to be slight impacts. So mainly damaging winds such as trees knocked down, powers out, that kind of thing is possible. And looking at the rainfall forecast in that province, and I think you said Das Marinas. Is that what you said? Yes. Okay. Looking at the forecast there, looks to be around 50 millimeters of rain on the German run. The American run has totals up to 70 millimeters. European has it up to 220 millimeters of rain, and the Access model has it at around 100 millimeters of rain. So generally around, I'd say 30 to 250 millimeters of rain will be possible in that region. And yeah, on Friday there, they could get 50 to 100 millimeters of rain, as forecasted by Pagasa. The typhoon season has been going crazy. Yep. Oh geez. Okay. Still not updated yet on Pagasa. Um, Tropical Humberto going to form in the Atlantic, giving it around an 80% chance of doing so, I believe. Yeah, 80% chance of developing over the next 7 days from one disturbance and 50% chance from another. So I'd say about a 90% chance or so that we'll get or an 80%, I don't know, like 80 to 90% chance that we'll get a tropical cyclone or a Humberto out of one of these two systems. Michi Boy, I don't see that comment. Hold on. Let me do live chat to see if it shows it. Wow, okay, so it didn't show me that chat that you made. Sorry about that. Michi Boy, I don't know why. Huh. YouTube censored that for some reason, what you said. Um, that's weird. I can only see it if I do the live chat showing every message. Wow, okay, I did not see that. Sorry about that. Yeah, like Nepal and Indonesia, the Filipino people were quite revved up because the supposed budget to help the Philippines build structures for flood was used by corrupt politicians. Interesting. Flood control projects are being controlled by corrupt people. Now, if I go back to top chat, can I see that message? Ah, no, Johannes, I can't see your message um, that said it was controlled by corrupt politicians or whatever. So that's interesting that YouTube didn't show me that comment. Sorry about that. I was curious about that if it was censoring it or whatever. Um, Anyways, let's see. No, this new storm is not set to become a super typhoon, Nelson. Should become a typhoon, but not super typhoon. It's Opong and Ompong. Yep. Yes. How to get chat XP? I don't know. Yo, what's up, David? So again, if anyone has any questions about their local impacts and what they could get, I will gladly cover. That's Is there a chance two tropical storms in the Atlantic at the same time? Yes. I'll go to the North Atlantic there so that we can see those two tropical cyclones developing. 93L, this eastern one, should develop quicker. 94L may struggle over Cuba, may develop by the Bahamas, and then both of them could do a dance called the Fujiwara effect. And that's going to be a nightmare to forecast. That especially if it's frontal, if it's not. What makes frontal system combining with the tropical cyclone? Whoo-wee, that's a mess. You can see its frontal there merges with another low. Maybe it becomes a subtropical cyclone. I don't even know. Could this end of the year be busy with super typhoons, Chase? I'm not sure. I don't really pay attention to that. But we can look at the longer range in the Western Pacific beyond the 5 day range or beyond the 7 day range. There is a signal within the next 7 to 10 days in the Philippines Sea. That only popped up recently. There was another signal by the Northern Mariana Islands, but that's kind of faded away for now. The one by the Philippines Sea. Um, I mean, it does eventually develop though. So there's two disturbances we may need to watch out over the next 10 to 15 days. So we could see things get more active. I believe the Climate Prediction Center released their forecast. I'll pull that up on stream. It looks like it should quiet down a little bit. So here's a look at the forecast now for the next 2 to 3 weeks across the globe. Those red areas are the areas that we could see some tropical cyclone development. So one system in the main development region, another in the eastern Pacific, another in the western Pacific there. Um, and then the next week, it's mainly the eastern Pacific, Bay of Campeche, and western Caribbean, and then the western Pacific, mainly the Philippine Sea, that area. So nothing too crazy. Aren't seeing anywhere of 60% or greater. I'm not sure though how active the rest of it will be. Got Sandy 2.0 there. Is there a new tropical cyclone bulletin? I'll update the website. Uh, there we go. I do see the latest tropical, and now they're forecasting a typhoon. And Signal 1 warnings are in effect. Alright, so they are now predicting a typhoon. Let me see how strong of a typhoon. Okay, they are going stronger than they were before. They're now forecasting 140 km/h winds in the South China Sea in towards wow, okay, they're forecasting a stronger system. What were they forecasting before? I swear they weren't forecasting anything too strong. I'm gonna scroll down to see what they were forecasting last time. Well, so they went from 110 to 140 kilometers an hour now as their forecast. I'll pull that up on stream now. Here is their latest forecast right here. Oh dang, okay, it updated the other website as well. But becomes a severe tropical cyclone by tonight, and then becomes a typhoon by tomorrow night. And it looks like they have... No, okay. It looks for them makes landfall on Friday morning or Friday evening as a typhoon, and then still remains a typhoon across the Philippines. So it could be a typhoon by the time it's nearing Manila, and then strengthens into a major typhoon in the South China Sea and strikes Hainan Island as a major typhoon. So this has shifted more north. I'll probably shift mine more north as well. Um, the more north it is, the worse it is pretty much for Vietnam and Hainan Island, those areas. Actually, the worst case scenario is if the storm moves right through. I don't know. We have seen storms take that path, and then they just drag in a bunch of dry air from Hainan Island. I don't know. Maybe this is the worst case scenario for Hainan Island. Oh yes, and Signal 1 warnings are now in effect for Samar. Right there, Northern Samar, Samar, and Eastern Samar. Don't know why it's not called Western Samar. Um, Wait, do they mention anything about Signal 4 warnings? Ooh, okay. The highest wind signal that may be hoisted throughout the passage is Signal 4 warnings. So, what do Signal 4 warnings even mean here? Um, I'm going to look that up. Signal warning meaning. Um, oh, Signal 4 warnings for typhoon? Okay. Huh. Okay, that makes more sense now. Um, okay. I get it now. Modified, okay. So tropical storm, severe tropical. Wait, what's this? Hold on, I'm looking at something on another page or whatever. Okay, so Signal 4 warnings only in effect for typhoon force winds. So I guess Signal 4 warnings could be issued for Manila. My bad. I didn't realize that. I thought that that was only for like major typhoon things. So yeah, I guess that is possible. Interesting. I like their graphics that they have here. That's interesting. Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. So yeah, I guess Signal 3 to 4 warnings are possible for Manila. I would not count that out. So looking at their forecast again, does have it making moving almost across the Philippines as a typhoon now. So yes, looks like that is possible. Yes, Hainan Island needs to prepare for double impacts from both Ragasa and now this system. Anyways, that's about all the time I have for this update, I think. Yep. Don't worry, there will be another update tomorrow. I can pretty much guarantee that. At around the same time or a little bit earlier. Yes. So, thank you all so much for watching. Just a recap, though, that there will be another stream tomorrow and another stream whenever it makes landfall. If it does as like a typhoon. But yeah, there should be an update. Tomorrow for you all is going to be Thursday, I believe, since today's Wednesday for you all, right? Yeah, today's Wednesday for you all. So Thursday morning there should be an update, and then Friday morning as well. Yep, so I will see you all tomorrow. So I will see you in the next update. Stay safe.